Well, it seems a little early in the season to be having the blame game, but after an 8-game losing streak, that's exactly where we're at, joined by Richard Skinner from Local12.com and former Reds player and coach Dave Collins. You saw that poll right there. Is it Brian Price, Jocketty, Castellini, or my thing is it's baseball. This team has had a lot of injuries, and a lot of things have gone wrong so far for this season.
Yeah, but now we're into 2 years of this. I mean, you're 2 years removed from a playoff appearance. You were sub 500 last year, and people blame the injuries, and that was part of it. But you could see the talent level start to decrease. I'm starting with Walt Jocketty. There's only a couple of guys on this roster that are his guys. One of those is Billy Hamilton. He's got a handful of pitchers he signed, Iglesias he signed, Chapman he signed, but neither one of those guys came through the system. Those two guys basically were ready to pitch in the major leagues coming out of Cuba. They've done nothing in 6 or 7 years with the farm system, and there's nothing on the horizon. It'd be one thing to say send Billy Hamilton down, and I think Dave and I agree that's probably the best thing for him, Brad. But, you know, there's nobody to bring up, and that's the fault. It all starts with the general manager in this case.
Yeah, big payroll, not a lot in the cupboard right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with Skin. I look at Walt Jocketty, and I mean, Walt Jocketty is a well-respected man in the game. But since he's been over here, the farm system hasn't gotten any better. Some of the trades that we've made, I question some of the trades, and one of them is Matt Latos. When we brought Matt Latos over here, he's not even here, and he was supposed to be the centerpiece of us winning a World Series. We ended up getting rid of him, and when I was coaching with the Colorado Rockies, we knew Latos had great stuff, but there was question marks about his heart, and they ended up getting rid of him, and I think they wanted to get rid of him. I really question some of the moves that they've made, and they have not improved from year to year. When you look at the weaknesses they've had the last couple of years, they haven't improved on them when the season started.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jason Marquis gets to start tomorrow as they try to get out of this slide. Is he a guy that's kind of been a sacrificial lamb right now? They haven't scored a lot of runs for him in his losses, but you know he's eaten up a lot of innings to kind of save that bullpen and see what the young arms, Iglesias and Lorenzen, have for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's the only thing he gives you is he eats up innings. I mean, he doesn't have good stuff anymore. He doesn't get people out consistently enough anymore. They kicked the tires on him, and I get it because they were trying to nurse some of these young guys along, but he gives you no value other than the fact that you have nothing better to put in the rotation than Jason Marquis. The one good thing he's got right now, Brad, he's at least got a healthy arm, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing I look at with Jason Marquis on a championship club, when you pick up a guy 36 years old that hasn't pitched in a year, you know he's not going to give you 200 innings.
Whose recent track record was terrible before that.
I agree totally. So for me, he's a insurance policy for me. If I sign him, I'm going to have him down in AAA or in rookie league, just getting some innings in, getting some work in. So if I need to call him up, which they would have need to during this season, you've got him. But for them to start him, to think that he's going to give them a lot of innings, I just didn't see it.
Well, let's talk Devin Mesoraco. He'll come back to town, have the doctors look at that hip impingement. What's going on there? It seems like it's been a long time to wait and see how this was going to progress. He just squatted 15 times. The last couple of times he did that, incredible pain. Right. And so were they hoping there was some miracle cure? Because it's been a long time coming.
I think they did. I think they thought that maybe rest, and obviously him not catching, all he was used was either a pinch hitter or the few times they played in the AL games that he was able to DH some. And I think the hope was the rest of that, the fact he wasn't going to squat for a while, he wasn't going to catch for a long while, would fix it. But, you know, he tested it out, and he was in a little bit of pain after that 15 squat day. Then he tried it the next day, and all bets were off at that stage. I think you have to now turn around, and you've got to shut him down. It's of no value at this stage of the game.
Yeah, and when you look at Mesoraco, when he hasn't been DHing against interleague teams, you're basically playing with 24 players because he can't play. And for me, he's your everyday catcher. If he's not your everyday catcher, then you got to put him on the disabled list and get him well.
Season's not going very well. Cueto, obviously, most likely on the trading block. Jim Bowden recently coming out, Mike Leake as well. When do we start seeing this team make some move and blow this thing up and look to the future?
I think you do it as soon as you can, and that doesn't mean that tomorrow you trade Johnny Cueto just to trade Johnny Cueto. You start to get the feelers, and if you feel that what you're going to get today is probably the best you're going to get for a Johnny Cueto or a Mike Leake, and you're right, Mike Leake on the open market is going to command a lot of money for what amounts to an average pitcher. So both of those guys may be guys you have to deal. It doesn't have to be today if it's not the right offer. Maybe the closer to the deadline you get, that's when you get the best deal. But whenever you get what you think is a good deal coming back in return, you make it. If that's tomorrow, Memorial Day, then that's when you make it.
When you're talking about who's to blame in the organization, look at the long-term contracts they're giving out to young players 2 or 3 years prior to their free agency that haven't shown the durability and the consistency year in and year out to deserve those long-term contracts. and it's put them behind the eight
Big
ball
bind.
because look at the money you got coming to Joey Votto. If you look at what has happened with the Reds, same thing has happened with the Twins when they tied up Mauer over there, and the same thing is happening with this ball club.
Is anyone immune from being moved? You know, those are tough contracts to move.
Not if you're blowing this thing up. No, absolutely not. And maybe, again, I don't think you're going to find Joey Votto on the open market because you're going to have to eat a chunk of that money. You're not going to just eat that money to eat it. He still is a gate attraction to some degree. He's still, I don't think he's an all-star caliber player anymore, but he's still a very, very good player. There's no doubt about that. No, I don't think anyone's immune. If you are now going to look and say, this has got to be rebooted, you have to do it now because the quicker you do it, the quicker you have a chance to get this thing right. If you keep waiting, you turn next year into a 65-win year and the year after into a 65-win year before you get this thing going in the right direction. You got to start now.
And Dave, let me ask you near term. They're back home against the Rockies and the Nationals. Can they get things going, a little positive vibe? You've been in that clubhouse to see how quickly things can change in this game.
Well, one thing you got to look at with the Reds is look at their lineup. I mean, you go top to bottom, they got some talent in that lineup. The problem is you'll only go as far as your starting pitching is going to take you, and you got to have strong bullpen coming out of there. Kansas City just showed you the formula on how to win. Good solid pitching that can get you 5 or 6 innings, and then they got 3 guys that can close it for you, and all their hitters know how to grind out at bats. They're very disciplined at the plate about grinding at bats, and that's how you win.
Guys, good stuff. Thanks for dropping by.
Brad, thanks.